Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Leonardo Vieira to talk about the powers of spirit, thought, and will. Mr. Vieira is one of the founding members of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. He's conducted and assisted with study groups, mediumship meetings, and public talks. Mr. Vieira holds a bachelor's in business administration and a master's in management, specializing in homeland security. Professionally, he works in a major financial institution as a banker. Please join us in welcoming Mr. Vieira.
Thank you, Leah, for the great presentation and the warming welcome as well. It's good to see it's going to get loud. Good to see some friends that I haven't seen for a while being here with you. And thank you for the opportunity to be heard as well. We were tasked to talk about the powers of the spirit, thought, and will. And some of the elements that we will be covering here today, Lee already touched upon, and we would like to kind of brush it off again, just go over so we have a better understanding. And hopefully, towards the end of this talk, towards the end of this encounter here today, we have some tools with us that we can apply on our lives. Nothing's going to change if we don't put our effort, as we saw that with Leah, that the change takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of time, right? But pat yourselves on the back. We are here today, and that is already a great win-win for all of us because it shows that we have done good so far, right? We could be doing other things, and here we are today. But I would like to ask you a question. Why we're here? Why we're here today? Anybody want to take a shot? To learn, okay. To improve, okay. I'm going to ask you. Okay, now we're getting deeper. All right. So to learn or to remind ourselves that this is not the only life we have, right? And it could be, we could go around the room and we'll come up with several answers, right? But this is the idea of this moment that we're going to be sharing here. For us to get to the nitty-gritty of our thoughts and ask ourselves why we're here. Why am I doing this? Why am I thinking of this or that? And we're going to get back to this, right? But I also wanted to bring some purpose with this idea, right? We came here, we have a purpose. We want to learn more. We want to be reminded ourselves. We want to remind ourselves of certain things that sometimes, even though we know it, but it's good to be in family, right? It's good to be together where we emphasize these things between ourselves. Along with that is that it took a group of people, right, to come together and say, you know what, we have another symposium that we have to put together. Let's pick a date. Let's pick a topic, right? And let's get together for the event, right? So there was a thought and there was a displacement of energy. The same thing, it happened to us today, right? We have to go, we have to drive. So there was a thought and there is energy being displaced, the thought and the will, right? So it's not like we just dropped over here. Or did that happen? Well, sometimes we do find ourselves in that position, right? We're thinking and it's like, what happened? Why am I thinking of this? Why am I here? I'm quite sure that many of us have been in that position. And it reminds me of the quote of this amazing man, René Descartes, when he said, cogito ergo sum. In other words, in English, let's translate, I think, therefore I am. It would be nice for us to be at home and say, I think, and then just teletransport ourselves to here, right? But no, we're in the physical body. We have to drive. We have to get ourselves together. We have to go to the places. We have to really make this machine, the physical body, move, right? But one more time, I dare you to say, no, I've never been in that position, because we all have been. Sometimes thinking that we are a one thought. We are that moment, right? And usually that happens when we're going through moments of despair. And it is so true that sometimes we find ourselves in that thinking moment, and we are that despair. We are that difficult that we face, right? And we don't stop to say or to think, Why am I thinking of this? What led us to that thought? What led us to that will as well? Well, we'll see a little bit more. In order for us to get to know a little bit more about ourselves, for us to understand what this transformative power is, the thought and the will, let's use of some of the elements that we learned from Spiritism and kind of get everything together again. And hopefully, again, we'll have the tools that we need. Forgot to check my time. So who are we? Lee already kind of mentioned a little bit, but I want to just go back with you and kind of emphasize a little bit on what we learned from Spiritism. Why Spiritism? Because Spiritism, it is a science that deals with the nature, origin, and destiny of spirits and their relation with the corporeal world. And we are obviously in a Spiritist event. That's why we will, for sure, use of elements that Spiritism brings to us. Otherwise, we could be learning about different things. But here we are. And I think that it's important to bring this element. It kind of emphasizes, again, the validity of what Spiritism brings to us in terms of the self. Not only me, Leo, this reincarnation, but what happened before, what's happening now, and hopefully what's going to happen in the future as well. So Allan Kardec in the Spirits book asks, what is a spirit? And the answer of the Spirit is the intelligent principle of the universe. Very simplistic, but with a lot of information behind, right? But we're not going to get stuck on the question and the answer. We're just going to kind of go over for the sake of time and for us to elaborate within ourselves the right answers. But there's another question that I find that is really interesting as well when Kardec asks, how may we define spirits? It changes a little bit, and it's more elaborate. We can say that spirits are the intelligent beings of creation. They populate the universe beyond the material worlds. As we can see here, if you don't feel good about yourself with this answer, I don't know what will get you, but we are the intelligent beings of the universe, and we populate everything. It differs us from this podium, from this computer. We create these things. We are the intelligent beings, right? And these are the moments that we read these things, it's like, okay, very subjective. Well, it can be if our thoughts are there, right? In that subjective world. Keeping continuation. In the Medium's book, we will see that the spirit is the thinking being that survives, The spirit is the thinking being that survives death. The body is no more than an accessory for the spirit, an envelope, a garment that it abandons after having worn it. Besides this material envelope, the spirit possesses another semi-material envelope, which is connected to the first. At death, the spirit abandons the body, but not the second covering, which we'll call the perispirit. And once more, Leah also mentioned this earlier today, and we would like to touch back on, because it will kind of give us a differentiation from one another, right? So what are we? We're spirit, we have our perispirit, and we have our physical body, right? Why is this important for us in this idea of thought and will? Because we often think that the thought is in the physical body. It's created by the physical body. Well, non-living beings then would be able to think, right? So it is within me. It's part of me, right? And Descartes also touches on this a long time ago. Well, I'm thinking. We're thinking beings, right? Again, another power that is very, very not used. Well, we don't use it so well. We lose the physical body, but we continue on, right? And we maintain our perispirit. That changes over time as well. And there we'll find all the other thoughts that we have already thought, all the other actions that we already made, which was imprinted in the perispirit, and in the physical, in the future life, perhaps will be imprinted in the physical body as well. So, not trying to get into genetics, because I'm not a doctor. If we look at our parents and say, I got this from you, I got this from my mother or from my father, guess what? There's some help there, but quite often, we really have to look within ourselves. And when we look in the mirror, we can say, we are a product of our own selves, right? More to come on that. We are eternal. This, if there's anything that we want to pay attention to, is this part over here. And we'll get to it more. But we want to say that we are eternal, not only from this life on. We had a past. We certainly have a present. We're here nowadays, right now. And we'll have a future as well. So whatever is happening to me right now is a consequence, perhaps, of our past, right? Whatever I will be in the future is also a collective consequence of what I'm doing now and my past. So it changes our perspective on where we are, what I'm thinking, and the control that I have as well over thought and will, at least for me, hopefully to you as well. Because now we're thinking that we're eternal. Now we know for sure, or at least we're being reminded that there's a tomorrow. Maybe not in the physical body. We also have to take that in consideration. Joanna D'Angelo reminds us to think about death, not in a morbid way, but to think about death, to go back to our true essence. And it's okay, right? We are connected physically and spiritually. If we think we're about what? I don't know, maybe 30, 50 of us here today, more than that. And that's it? No. There is way more, right? And there will be so many more tomorrow. Think about what we learn here today, what we will do when we come in contact with our brothers and sisters or family members tomorrow. We will be multiplying what we have reminded ourselves or we have learned here today. So we are in this eternal connection. But there is more to this connection that we would like to mention as well. Once more, what does this whole thing have to do with thought and will? We know a little bit of ourselves now, right? We can at least know the reference. We know at least the reference that we can go back to and say, okay, this is where I need to look for. I need to understand a little bit more of this. Let's talk about thought then. What is thought? Same way we question, what was I thinking of? What am I thinking about, right? We can also ask, what is thought? What is thought for you? Yeah, I'm giving time for you to think. You don't have to answer. Think about what is thought. And I guarantee you're going to get to a point that you're like, wow, I can think. I can process things, right? I can question. I can answer. One of the things for many of us here is that we have is the ability to speak a couple languages, right? And it's a beautiful thing. Often people come to me with asking me about my broken English, say, how many languages you speak? I'm like, I start thinking, I'm like, well, I'm still trying to learn English, born and raised in Brazil, but it is a beautiful thing because it's not only the language, but it's also the culture that we learn, right? It's the insights that you get from one another, right? What you learn with this country as well. So I'm kind of elaborating a little bit more on the thought because we need to see the value of it. Right? We look at a little bit on a dog, for example, or an animal, right? It's fragmented. They look at us, they signal something, and we help them, right? Or they help us sometimes, but it's fragmented. But us, it's continuous. Even if I say to you right now, stop thinking, you're going to be thinking about stop thinking. And they're on and on and on and on, right? So in Spiritism, we will learn that on question 89, actually is the second part of the question, that thought is one of soul's attributes. So you can't run from it. It's our attribute. It's something that we have. And it took millions of years for us to be here in this position. So let's not take for granted. It is through thought that they enjoy unlimited freedom, where thought knows no obstacles. Its manifestation may be hindered, but not erased. We can be in the worst state ever, incarcerated in whatever situation we may be. Because when I say incarceration, it's not just the incarceration of the prisons and whatnot. Sometimes we incarcerate ourselves in one thought. And this is beautiful because we can snap out of it. We can change it if we allow ourselves to do so. So the freedom, the only true freedom that we have is through thought. Hopefully you're not frittering around right now. You're paying attention to this. Because sometimes we do that as well, right? We wander around, right? But that's the idea. In the Spirit Review also, we learn, Kardec will remind us that thought is the characteristic attribute of the spiritual being. It is what distinguishes spirits from matter. Without thought, the spirit would not be spirit. We're not there yet. We just mentioned the animals. They have this fragmented thought, right? They don't think continuously. It stops. So much so that anything calls their attention, whatever that is, right? What about will? It's a little bit more difficult, isn't it? Because we think, but what is will? What is will for you? Well, as spiritists, we always talk about free will, right? On how we connect with one another, how we act upon one another and even ourselves. But what is will? Let's try to bring some elements here and help ourselves. Once more, in the Spirit Review of 1864, Kardec will say that will is not a special attribute, as thought is, of the spirit. It is thought reached at a certain degree of energy. It is thought transformed into a driving force. It is through will that the spirit imbues the limbs and the body with movements in a certain direction. But if it has the force to act on material organs, how much greater must this force be on the fluidic elements that surrounds us? Once more, we take it for granted. I can do whatever with my body. We can create beautiful things, but there are certain moments of our lives that we are really in a position to put into practice what we're learning here, or to give that driving force to thought, and we stop, and we retract, and we cry, and we blame someone else, right? Because we think that others need to do for us. I bring the picture of a sailboat like this, and I was thinking about the idea of will. Didn't bring butterflies, sorry, ladies. But how strong was the will of the men, and many of us today, when they went out to the sea, not knowing where they're going? Think about it. They had a thought. Look, I need to get to a point that my coordinates tells me that I'll get there one day. But they did not know what they're going to have or to see. There was no weather channel for sure, right? And they had to deal with the elements, how much food they had. They packed enough for whatever. But the will, the desire to find something drove them towards the sea, right? Emmanuel, in this amazing book, and this is one of the books that we also would like to invite everyone to read, Thought and Life, he will tell us that the will he defines our conscience in departments, as if we're in an office, right? And he talks about a couple of them, not all of them. He says that there is one department, the department of desire, where purposes and aspirations are at work, simulating our activity. Department of Intelligence, which expends evolutionary and cultural assets. Department of Imagination, slowly joining together the riches of ideals and sensitivity. And the Department of Memory, where archives our experiences are kept, and yet other departments that define the many functions of those souls. So there are many. However, there is the cabinet, and he calls now the cabinet of the will, the enlightened and the vigilant manager that supervises all sectors of our mental activities, without which nothing happens. And we know that, right? It is the helm for all kinds of driving forces incorporated in our knowledge. It is the decisive factor. So, we have thought, we have our will. But there's one element that I also would like to bring to each one of you that will kind of binds us together, will kind of bring us together. And I'm not saying in a very simplistic way, but on how we move things around, right? I know the room is beautiful. We all gather, we put things together, but there's more than that we have put together. When we were hopefully preparing to come here today, we start thinking, I need to be my best behavior. I need to dress well, right? The ladies, I'm pretty sure, were choosing the different shoes or whatever, right? The makeups and all, right? Everybody's, it is true. It's okay. It's beauty, right? That we're trying to prepare ourselves. So we're moving elements, and hopefully the elements of the mind as well. So how does this happen, right? How do we connect with one another at a deeper level? Not only the physical, it's through fluids. And this is something else that we would like to bring in this idea, in this better understanding of thought and will, that we are immersed in the universal cosmic fluid. I like to bring the example of us, all of us, in a swimming pool right now, right? And we are still. If one of us makes any sudden movement, guess what? We'll feel it as well. Let's hold that thought. In the Genesis, we will learn that the universal cosmic fluid is the primitive elementary matter whose modifications and transformations comprise the innumerable variety of bodies found in nature. The spirits act upon the spiritual fluids, but they do not manipulate them like humans manipulate gases. Instead, they use the help of thought and will. The rest is important here, but I want to stop and say we are manipulating the physical elements, but through our thought and will as well, we are manipulating the fluids. So when we go to someone else, a friend's house, and they offer us Brazilians with, and the British, like Brazilians, we like the coffee. The British, they like the tea, whatever water. But it's made with such an effort that it tastes like it was the first coffee you ever taste in your life, or that tea, or the water. It could be tap water, but it was given with such a heart that we're like, this is interesting. Or anything else that perhaps we may receive in the physical body. It's the same element, but there is a different taste. Because we put our thought, there was a thought of offering something to a loved one, and there was a drive, the will to offer, but offer in a different way. Offer it with love, right? And we taste it, we feel it. We are accommodated in, as much as we are accommodated by our mother's arm, right? Or a hug of a friend, right? So sometimes these transformations are the result of intent. Frequently, however, they are the product of an unconscious thought. It is enough for a spirit to think about something in order for it to be produced, just as it is enough for the spirit to, intone a melody in order to resound in the atmosphere. So we are, with our thoughts, we're singing. We're producing waves, much like we mentioned as well in the pool. In the Spirit Review, once more, thought acts on ambient fluids as sound acts on air. These fluids bring us together, brings us thought, as air brings us sound. It can therefore be said with complete truth that there are waves and rays of thoughts in these fluids that intersect without getting confused, just as there are waves and sound rays in the air. We were driving here, Daniel, Kirsten, Isabella, and I, and at one point of our conversation, I said something abruptly, and Kirsten in the back said, Leo, I was thinking about the same thing, right? Is it by chance? Yes, we're in the same conversation, right? It's not by chance. that sometimes we're thinking about someone and then suddenly the phone rings. That was not my case when my phone rang, folks, but it just happened. Somebody called me. But in any case, the idea is for us to pay attention to these moments, pay attention to the connections. Why is that so? If I'm feeling afflicted, and there is no apparent reason for me to be afflicted at that moment, quite sure somebody is afflicted on the other side of the phone, wherever the other side of the phone may be, right? And we have to pay attention. Sometimes, quite often, we face the idea of going to the Spiritist Center and we don't feel well. Why is that so? Perhaps there is a brother or sister connected with me or that individual that we feel afflicted. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, what we would do with this is of importance, right? Because Emmanuel tells us in the same book that only the will is sufficiently strong to sustain the harmony of the spirit. Of course, and this is important, it cannot stop mental reflections wherever these are produced by contacts with others, because attunement is an unbreakable law. But it can impose disciplinary control over the elements it governs, so as to maintain them cohesive in the service of goodness. In other words, somebody comes afflicted to us, we have the right, and I would say even more, we have the duty to stay still. We will help the individual, but we don't want to get into that frequency. We will offer an arm, but not let think the arm and the whole body. The bombardments of life will come. Just turn on the TV. We'll get into despair, right? But we have this right. It's my thought. It's my will. It's not an egotistic thing to think, but an analysis that we can make every single time when something is proposed to us. And here comes the closing part of it, right? We have found ourselves that way, not knowing what to do. Whatever you want to think what that picture, if you want to take a peek as well, of that picture may be, we have found ourselves in that position several times. And guess what? Sorry to say, but we'll find ourselves in there again. But there is a way out. The moments that we are so connected with the negative thought that we look at and say, what is this? Why am I thinking of this? Couple points here for us to close out. And I'll start with the card again. In another one of his meditations, he said the following: what of thinking? I find here that thought is an attribute that belongs to me. It alone cannot be separated from me. I am. I exist. That is certain. But how often? Just when I think, for it might possibly be the case if I cease entirely to think, that I should likewise cease altogether to exist. Not that we are wishing one another the idea of not existing anymore, but if we don't exercise this power of thought and will, we may pronounce ourselves dead temporarily, because something is going to come on us and say, wait a minute, wake up, right? And this is a thinker, this is a philosopher. On question 909, we will see that how could humans always overcome their evil tendencies through their own efforts? Well, yes. And sometimes with very little effort. What we lack is the willpower. How few of us make such an effort, however. Right? Joanna de Angelis, to finalize in this part here, says God gave us willpower. I never forget this message. It's chapter 50 of this amazing book, Happy Life. God gave us willpower. If it seemed weak to you, guess what? That is because we are not exercising it. We are not exercising it. And she wanted to say, each and every day, each and every moral and organic function needs practice to be able to respond rapidly to mental commands. Do not give up if at first you do not succeed. And this is so reassuring because she's saying, do not give up if you do not succeed, which it means that we're not going to get it first. It's going to take effort. It's going to take time, right, Leah? It's not going to happen overnight. I guarantee you that tomorrow I'll be facing challenges, especially when we give a talk about something. A bunch of things happens, right? To test us, to really put us connected to our higher selves and say, I need to try this again. Change, like Daniel likes to say, change the team. If you're not winning, just change the team. And something will happen. So, for us to close, why am I here? I want to ask you guys to be curious about this. If you get to that point that stress took over, you don't have no more energy whatsoever, you ask yourself, why am I thinking about this? You have that power. You have that capability. Because sometimes when we say power, it's like superpower, and it is. But let's diminish a little bit and talk to ourselves. Be kind to ourselves. Why am I thinking about A, B, or C? I have no ever reason to be feeling this way. We know we have a past. We have this beautiful present right now. I want a better future. So I will choose what I will be thinking. Joanna de Angelis again reminds us that when a thought comes and it's not of a good nature, we replace it. Although simplistic, but very effective, right? Why am I not able to accomplish this or that? Try again. We have light today because somebody was persistent with the light bulb. We have computers today. We have everything that is in front of us. And we are here today because somebody was persistent. The last thought that I would leave with you in terms of this idea of curiosity. What if our parents were not exercising their thought and their will? We can stay in the physical body or on the physical idea of the question. But let's think about us spirits receiving this opportunity to reincarnate again, given the opportunity to think, to be active, right? To apply ourselves over matter, but also the fluids in whichever way we want, hopefully for the positive. And that's what I would like to leave with you in the idea of thought and will. We have the tools, we have the elements, it only depends on us. Thank you.